and it's only got 6% of the world's water. This means that China needs very much to import resources of one sort or another from elsewhere.
To pay for these imports, China has turned itself into the world's factory. Scarcely an hour goes by on the Progress's journey that it doesn't pass a ship loaded with Chinese exports bound for the West. The budding empire has built a Mediterranean hub for its ships at Piraeus in Greece. China has done so well in this trade that it has grown rich in foreign currencies.
Because they have that treasure trove, they have that pile of reserves, the world is ultimately for sale to China. They're switching to a global commodities position, and that is a switch that I would characterize as the imperial switch.
China is out in the world like never before, and it has a huge appetite for resources, which means that its interests are everywhere, and so is its navy. In the Mediterranean, Libya has become a destination for both investments and workers from China. Libya is rich in oil and had a leader eager to diversify his alliances. So when the Arab Spring brought turmoil to Libya, the Chinese Navy came to the rescue of an astonishing number of Chinese expats.
China had 37,000 or so workers in Libya who had to be evacuated. And it's an illustration of the extent to which China has acquired global interests.
The Chinese dragon in Europe's backyard made the stakes in Libya that much higher for the West. Made intervention into the conflict a natural course of action.
Today, the Security Council has responded to the Libyan people's cry for help. This council's purpose is clear: to protect innocent civilians.
This was explained as trying to prevent a massacre on the basis of human rights, but few people are willing to overlook the fact that Libya also is one of the major sources of oil.
Libyans like this local journalist don't doubt that securing oil rights was a prime concern for energy-poor Europe.
NATO is looking for oil, I think. But as long as they are helping us, we can help them in the future.
So the liberation of Libya and the eviction of China from its energy sector are boons for the West. But it would be unwise to count China out of Libya for good.
I think we're going to find that they're back rather rapidly because they provide a very economical and efficient alternative to European and other contractors.
The new great game is all about access to resources. And Libya is important not just for its oil, but also for the gateway it offers. A short and flat passage deep into resource-rich Africa. Africa is an obvious place for China to answer its needs for raw materials because the continent has been neglected.
Some people have tended to treat Africa like a sort of humanitarian theme park. The Chinese treat it as a business opportunity.
Go to Africa today and you will see the genesis of an empire.
Resource-rich African nations are increasingly leaving the Western fold and becoming clients of Beijing. But China has an even greater need for oil from the Persian Gulf. Oil from Saudi, yes, but also from Iran. Yet China has neither asset control nor naval power in the Gulf.
Only the U.S. Navy is capable of protecting and monitoring those sea lanes.
So while the U.S. has grown accustomed to controlling who buys and sells oil in the Gulf, China's huge needs cannot so easily be contained. It is unlikely that it will stop buying oil from Iran. And it is not the only Eastern power coming to the Islamic Republic for its energy supplies. India is also deepening its commercial ties with Iran. The Indian Ocean's old trade networks are coming alive again, and the West has little say over these dealings.
The United States is going to have a much more difficult time maintaining the Pax Americana.
The West can't control Somalia, which spawns pirate threats to everyone. It struggles with new political realities in Egypt, Yemen, and Bahrain. America's strongest allies are no longer on the surest footing. All this after the U.S. has spent a fortune in the Middle East.
When the United States invaded Iraq in 2003, history was replaying itself. The lesson is, I think, fairly clear. Empires do not want to be stuck with a large long-term commitment to maintain land forces in any part of the Middle East.
First of all, it's too expensive, and what do you gain from it? Most of the time you lose at your expense. In fact, their economy is in its present state partly because they were trying too hard to be everywhere.
So imperial exhaustion is now part of the American reality.
The United States is living well beyond its means. The major part of our operating budget is borrowed, much of it from abroad. This cannot be sustained. Many people imagine that somehow through magic or voodoo economics we can keep up defense spending at the current level, but that is nonsense.
The U.S. Navy has gone from 586 warships during the Reagan era to 286 warships now.
Facing all these difficulties, the U.S. is unfolding a new strategy.
As we end today's wars, I have directed my national security team to make our presence and mission in the Asia-Pacific a top priority.
The U.S. is actually turning away from the Middle East and focusing on the containment of China.
It is a form of latent threat to China, saying we have the capacity to cut off your oil jugular, and you can't defend it.
This strategy may focus dwindling military resources on the West's greatest potential rival, but it risks turning China from a supporter of the Pax Americana to an antagonist.
The Chinese, they're actually very happy with the way the world is organized, and they are benefiting. If only the Americans did not treat China as a potential enemy.
It is forcing the Chinese to react.
They've just announced a big increase in military spending. A lot of it is going to go to anti-U.S. naval forces.
For the moment, the Chinese have enough internal challenges not to want complicated foreign involvements. But this empire of billions cannot forego the resources it requires for growth and prosperity. So they really want the West to continue to provide security to the sea lanes.
It's an uncertain world. The United States is no longer going to be in sole charge. How the Chinese deal with this world? It's their problem, frankly.
If the West falters or becomes a destabilizing force, China suffers. If the West takes offense at every rising power, there will be little chance for harmony.
The West is in decline because the rest of the world is catching up.
If the West fights to try and remain dominant at all costs, if it attacks those who escape its control, it will likely be moving against a strong and relentless current. The age of a single empire is over.
There will be multipolarity sooner or later, and now it is a bit sooner than they expected.
Financial realities in the U.S. and political realities in the Middle East mean that even the most aggressive approach will not likely be enough to contain the rise of new forces. And more violence will surely increase instability in the sea lanes.
We already are in a multipolar world economically, diplomatically, and politically, and we'll start to enter a multipolar world in a military sense as well.
Is there compromise or confrontation ahead? This great game is only just starting. Rash behavior can cause waves that threaten everyone. And in this new game, the players themselves must decide just how rough the seas will be.